Have you ever sat in a quiet room, maybe with the TV on just for background noise, and thought to yourself, is this what the rest of my life is going to look like? Maybe the kids are grown and busy with their own lives. Maybe your spouse has passed, or the two of you went separate ways long ago. Maybe the house feels too quiet now, or the phone just doesn't ring like it used to. If you've ever felt that ache of being alone after 60, you are not alone in that feeling. I've been there. I know what it's like to wake up and feel like you're just drifting through the days, trying to fill the hours. Asterisk. But here's what I want you to know: being alone does not mean being lonely. In fact, some of the most peaceful, joyful years of my life began after I accepted the quiet and started building a life around what truly makes me feel alive. I didn't wait for someone to knock on the door or for some grand event to come rescue me. I made a few small but meaningful changes, and over time, those changes turned into a life that's not only full but full of joy, peace, and a kind of freedom I never imagined. Asterisk today, I want to share with you what really helped me turn that page. Not just fluffy advice, but real, live-through steps that anyone can take. This isn't about pretending life is perfect or never feeling down. It's about discovering how much beauty is still available to you right now. Because even if you're 60, 70, or 80, it's never too late to feel deeply content and connected with yourself and the world around you. Asterisk, let me start with the very first shift that changed everything for me. I stopped waiting for someone else to bring me happiness. For years, I kept thinking that if my kids visited more, or if I met someone new, or if something exciting just happened, then I'd feel happy again. But waiting like that only made me feel stuck, and it put my joy in the hands of everyone else but me. One morning, I remember sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, and it hit me I could keep waiting forever, or I could take charge of how I spend my days. Asterisk. So I asked myself one simple question: what makes me feel good, even just a little? The answer wasn't big or fancy. It was walking in the garden. It was listening to old records. It was making a fresh cup of coffee and sitting in the sun. I started doing more of those things, not because they were life-changing by themselves, but because they reminded me that life could still feel good, even in the smallest moments. Asterisk. That leads me into something else that made a huge difference: creating a daily rhythm that feels like mine. After retirement or the kids moving out, our routines often disappear, and without even realizing it, our days start blending into each other. I found myself sleeping in late, eating meals at odd hours, and wondering where the day had gone. But once I gave myself a bit of structure, not rigid rules, just gentle rhythm, it brought a sense of purpose back into my life. I'd wake up, make my bed, open the curtains, and go for a short walk, even if it was just around the block. Asterisk. I began to treat my day with intention, like it mattered, because it does matter. And when I did that, I noticed something beautiful. The more I showed up for my day, the more the day showed up for me. I had more energy, more clarity, and a quiet kind of pride that I was showing up for my own life, even without anyone else watching. And that's a powerful feeling. Asterisk. Another thing I had to learn, and I say this with all my heart, is that it's okay to grieve the life you used to have. Being alone after 60 often comes after big changes. Maybe you lost someone, or maybe you had to downsize your home, or maybe old friendships have faded. It's natural to miss what once was. Don't let anyone tell you to just get over it. What helped me was honoring the past, but not living in it. I'd look through photo albums or light a candle in the evening and just say a quiet thank you for the memories. That gentle act of remembrance made space in my heart, not to dwell on the past, but to carry it with grace as I built something new. Asterisk. And I want to pause here for a second and tell you something that took me years to understand. You are not less whole just because you are on your own. You haven't failed because your life looks different now. You are not broken. If anything, this stage of life is a chance to rediscover the parts of yourself that got buried under all the roles you used to play: mother, wife, employee, caregiver. Now, you get to ask, who am I when it's just me? What do I love? What lights me up? Asterisk. For me, it started with something as simple as picking up a paintbrush again. I hadn't painted since my 30s, but one afternoon, I just felt the urge. I didn't care if I was good or if anyone saw it. I just put on some music, opened the windows, and painted. It wasn't about being productive or impressive. It was about reconnecting with something that made me feel alive inside. And that's what joy really is. It's not always laughter or excitement. Sometimes it's just that quiet spark that says, "This moment belongs to me." Asterisk. Now that we've talked about creating joy from within and finding peace in your daily life, let's move deeper into something else that helped me feel truly connected again. Not just with myself, but with the world around me. Not just with myself, but with the world around me. Asterisk. Because while it's beautiful to enjoy your own company, human connection still matters. We all need a sense of belonging, even if it looks different than it used to. For a long time, I believed that making new friends or finding community after 60 was too hard. I thought people had their own lives, their own circles, and honestly, I didn't want to feel like a burden or an outsider. But I learned something important: connection doesn't have to be big or dramatic. It can be small, simple, and still deeply meaningful. Asterisk. One of the things I started doing was just saying hello more. I know that might sound silly, but hear me out. I began making eye contact with people when I was out for my morning walk. I'd smile, nod, say a cheerful good morning, even if it felt awkward at first. And you know what? People smiled back. Some started to recognize me. Little by little, I started having short chats with the lady who walked her dog at the same time every day, or the man who tended to his roses down the block. Those small moments reminded me that I still belonged somewhere. Asterisk. I also started visiting the local library again, not just for books, but because they often had free community events, little workshops, art classes, and even book clubs. I joined a memoir writing group, even though I didn't think of myself as a writer. I went anyway, and it didn't matter if my story was polished or perfect. What mattered was that I was in a room with people who were sharing their lives and listening to mine. That group became a soft landing place for me, a space where I felt heard, valued, and connected. Asterisk. It took courage to walk into that room the first time. It took even more courage to go back the second week. But after a while, it became something I looked forward to. I started to understand that connection doesn't have to come from family or lifelong friends. Sometimes it's about opening your heart just a little, enough to let someone new in even for just an hour. Asterisk. And on the days I didn't feel like being around others, I still made sure to engage with the world in gentle ways. I'd write letters, real ones, on paper. Sometimes to old friends, sometimes to my grandchildren, even if they didn't always write back. There's something special about putting your thoughts on paper, sealing them up, and sending them out like little gifts. It makes you feel part of something bigger. Asterisk. That leads me to something else that added a deep layer of peace to my life: learning to enjoy solitude instead of fearing it. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Loneliness is when we feel disconnected, when we crave closeness and feel its absence. Solitude, on the other hand, is when we find contentment in our own presence. It's something we have to learn, especially if we've spent most of our lives surrounded by others. Asterisk. I used to fill every silent space with noise. The TV was always on, even if I wasn't watching. I kept busy with chores just so I wouldn't feel the stillness. But over time, I started to let the silence in. I began sitting quietly with a cup of tea in the morning. No phone, no news, just the birds and the breeze. And in that silence, I found something I didn't expect: clarity. My thoughts became softer, less rushed. My heart stopped racing. I felt anchored. Asterisk. That's when I started practicing gratitude, not in a forced, write a list kind of way, but just in little whispers throughout the day. I'd step outside and feel the sun on my face, and I'd say, thank you. I'd take a deep breath of fresh air and think, this moment is enough. And slowly, those tiny moments of gratitude became my way of anchoring joy. I didn't need to win the lottery or go on big adventures. I just needed to notice the goodness that was already here. Asterisk. Another thing that brought me unexpected peace was letting go of guilt. And I mean the kind of guilt that creeps in when we start putting ourselves first. Especially after 60. Many of us have spent decades caring for others, our children, our spouses, our jobs. And when that season shifts, we sometimes feel selfish for doing what we want. I remember feeling almost guilty for enjoying a quiet afternoon alone, or buying myself a little treat, or saying no to something that didn't feel right anymore. Asterisk. But the truth is, you have earned this time. You've given so much of yourself, and now it's okay to pour some of that care and attention back into your own cup. Peace comes when we stop apologizing for prioritizing our own well-being. You don't need permission to enjoy your life. You already have it. Asterisk. I also realize that part of peace is accepting that not everyone will understand your journey, and that's okay too. Sometimes people will question why you're spending time alone, or why you're not rushing to fill every empty space with company. But this stage of life is deeply personal, and there is no one right way to do it. What matters is that you feel aligned with yourself, that you're choosing joy on your own terms. Asterisk. Now, I know some days are harder than others. There are days when the quiet feels heavy, when the memories come in waves, or when you just wish someone was there to sit beside you. I've had those days too. And when they come, I let them. I don't fight them or pretend I'm fine. I light a candle, wrap myself in a soft blanket, and tell myself, this moment is a part of life, not the whole of it. Because even sadness is part of a full, beautiful life. Asterisk. And once that wave passes, I return to the habits that ground me. A walk, a phone call, a warm bath, a bit of music. These aren't glamorous things. They're not the kind of moments that get shared on social media or written into big memoirs. But they are the threads that weave a life that feels steady and full and good. Asterisk. So, if you're alone after 60 or even just feeling alone, I want you to hear this. Your life is not over. In fact, some of the most meaningful chapters may still be waiting to be written. The quiet is not your enemy. It's your space to rebuild, to rediscover, and to reconnect. Bit by bit, moment by moment. Asterisk. Now that we've talked about connecting with others, honoring solitude, and reclaiming joy, let's keep going. Because there's one more shift that truly deepened my sense of peace and helped me create a life that feels not only full but worth waking up for every single day. It was learning how to fall in love with the simple act of caring for myself, not just surviving each day, but living it with intention. Asterisk. And no, I don't mean spa days or fancy retreats, although if that's your thing, go for it. I'm talking about small, loving routines. I used to rush through my days, even when I had nowhere to be. I'd throw on whatever was clean, skip breakfast, and tell myself that little things didn't matter anymore. But they do. They really do. So I began doing something I hadn't done in years. I got dressed for myself. Asterisk. Even if I wasn't going out. Even if no one was going to see me. I picked out an outfit that made me feel good. I brushed my hair, put on a little fragrance I used to love, and looked in the mirror with kindness instead of criticism. That might sound silly to some, but it changed the way I moved through the day. I felt more like me again, more alive, more present. And that presence, that sense of care, started showing up in everything else. Asterisk, I began creating small rituals, little pockets of joy that gave shape to my days. Mornings became sacred. I'd wake up, stretch slowly, open a window, and listen. Not rush, not scroll through my phone. Just listen to the world waking up. I'd make a warm drink and sip it slowly. That's something we forget to do slow down. But when we do, life gets so much sweeter. Asterisk, and you know what else I started doing? Moving my body, not to lose weight or chase some old version of myself, but simply to feel better. I used to think exercise was something you did at the gym, surrounded by machines and mirrors. But now, my favorite kind of movement is a slow stretch in the morning sun, or a peaceful walk around the block with no destination in mind. Just letting my feet carry me. Letting my body remind me it's still here, still capable, still mine. Asterisk, there's something powerful about remembering that we can take care of ourselves, even when we're alone. That we can nourish our bodies, protect our peace, and show up for ourselves each day, not out of duty, but out of love. Asterisk, of course, peace doesn't come from routines alone. It also comes from letting go of the emotional clutter we sometimes carry, regrets, old disappointments. The voice that says, you should have done more, or you should be somewhere else by now. That voice is heavy, isn't it? But it's not always true. Asterisk, I had to forgive myself for things I held on to for years. Choices I made when I didn't know better. Relationships I stayed in too long or left too soon. Opportunities I missed. Words I said in anger. We all have those moments, tucked away like little bruises on the heart. But carrying them doesn't protect us. It only drains us. And peace can't grow in a garden of self-blame. Asterisk, so I gave myself permission to start fresh. To say, that was then. This is now. I reminded myself that healing isn't about pretending the pain didn't happen. It's about learning to live without letting it define us. Some days, I'd write those regrets down and burn the paper. Other days, I'd just breathe deeply and let the wind carry them away. Either way, I chose to stop letting my past decide my present. Asterisk, and that gave me room to dream again. Yes, even after 60. Because life doesn't stop offering new beginnings. It just whispers them more softly. I began asking myself, what do I still want to experience? Not in a bucket list kind of way, but in a curious, open-hearted way. I learned to paint with watercolors. I tried growing herbs on my balcony. I even took an online course on ancient history just because it fascinated me. No one graded me. No one cared if I was good at it. I was doing it purely for the joy of learning, of growing, of staying curious. Asterisk, that curiosity became a kind of light in my days. Because when we're curious, we're not stuck in the past. We're leaning into life again. And leaning in, even gently, invites joy to return. Asterisk, but if I'm honest, the deepest peace I've found has come from learning to befriend silence. Not just the kind of silence where the TV is off and the phone isn't ringing. I mean the kind of silence where you sit with your own thoughts and let them pass through like clouds. No judgment, no need to fix anything, just being. Asterisk, I used to fear silence because it made me feel the emptiness. But now, I've learned to welcome it, to treat it like a warm blanket instead of a cold space. Sometimes I sit quietly in place, my hand over my heart, just to feel it beating, just to remind myself I'm still here, still alive, still worthy of love, even if no one is saying it out loud. Asterisk, and maybe that's the most important thing I've learned on this journey, how to love myself again. Not in a loud or boastful way, but in a steady, quiet way. A way that says, you're doing just fine. A way that allows for laughter and tears, effort and rest, solitude and connection, all in balance, all in rhythm. Asterisk, because this chapter of life isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about making peace with who you are, embracing what you have, and choosing joy wherever you can find it. Asterisk, and I want you to know, if you're watching this right now and feeling unsure, feeling lonely, feeling like maybe your best days are behind you, please hear me when I say, they're not. Joy is still available. Peace is still possible. Love, in its many forms, is still waiting for you. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are a whole, beautiful soul with so much life left to live. Asterisk, so take that walk. Light that candle. Say yes to something new. Forgive yourself for old mistakes. Smile at someone passing by. Write that letter. Plant that flower. Dance in your kitchen. Sing even if your voice cracks. And above all, remember that you're not alone in this. Asterisk. We're in this together. And I'm cheering you on, every step of the way. Asterisk. If this message touched you, if you felt even a little more hopeful or a little more seen, I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments. What brings you peace these days? What brings you joy? Asterisk. And if you haven't already, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. We're building a kind, supportive community here, and there's always room for one more kind heart. Asterisk. Here's to living a life full of meaning, peace, and quiet joy, no matter your age, no matter your circumstances. Asterisk. You deserve it. You really do. Asterisk.